Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast, PepTalks. I am your hostess, Kat Frisbee, aka Pepper, and this is an expand episode. In these expand episodes, I'm interviewing people from all walks of life about their passions, hobbies, careers, interests, all kinds of things to dive a little bit deeper into things that we all may not know very much about. So I'm hoping that in these episodes, I can help inspire you to explore more in the world and expand your mind. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to PepTalks. I am your hostess, Kat Frisbee, and this is an expand episode. You are here with me at my childhood home, and we are interviewing my grandpa. Hi, Papa.
Hi, Kat. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm glad that I'm here with you guys. We traveled all the way out here, and today we're talking about my grandfather's rules for life. And I love the way that he explains his rules for life. So he just wants to talk about how he feels about life in general.
Well, I may forget a few, so forgive me if I do.
Maybe that's why. So, Papa, where would you like to begin?
Well, I was thinking about life in terms of my bicycle. That's why my bike. Can they see my bicycle?
They can.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I've had this bicycle, which, by the way, is a Peugeot PX10, for more than 50 years. And as I thought about what Kat asked me to do, I thought, life is really a bicycle ride. It's a ride because everything we do in life falls around certain principles that have to be adhered to and certain principles that must be maintained, otherwise you get into serious trouble. On a bicycle, you obviously have to maintain your balance. Well, balance is critical in life. On a bicycle, you have to know all the safety rules of the road that you would use as a motorist, but you have to know more on a bicycle because you're in a very defensive mode as a rider. Mm-hmm. You're really very vulnerable. And riding a bicycle teaches you how to handle the vulnerabilities of life. It also teaches you how to maintain your brain and your body, because you have to learn how to maintain the bicycle.
Right, or else it'll fall apart.
Right. So if you learn how to be a bicycle mechanic early on in the experience, you're probably going to treat your body real well as the bicycle. Treating the bicycle well means a lot of things that relate directly to your body. For instance, I'm going to put my coffee down. I have my little toolkit, which I've carried with me on this bicycle for 50 years.
It's like a little wallet.
It really is. And these tools go way back to even before the bike. But the critical thing in the bicycle is balance, obviously. And with these new bikes, you're riding on very narrow tires. So maintaining balance is kind of tricky for a lot of people, particularly guys like me who started out when I was 2 years old.
Started out when you were 2?
I started out when I was 2 riding a tricycle. And, riding a tricycle is pretty easy. The balance issues don't come into play.
Right.
My parents gave me that bicycle when I was 2, and when I was 3, they decided I'd outgrown it. So on my 3rd birthday, they gave me a new tricycle, and they invited all my friends to the party. And one of the first rules of life I learned was how to control my anger, because a little boy got on my bicycle and started riding it in the living room. And I immediately went over to him and I ripped him off the bicycle, threw him down on the floor. And my mother, of course, was horrified, came over and picked up the little boy and told me off and said, "Jimmy, you can't ride your bicycle for a while now until you learn never to do that again." So, very valuable lesson.
You learned a lot of themes for life around bicycling at a very young age,
At a very young age,
It started early for you, around bikes.
It did. And at age 4, I learned how to ride a two-wheel bike with my father. And he basically taught me how to handle fear because he held on to the back of the bike and I was pedaling along and I looked back and I said, "Don't let go." And he was way, way back. He had let go.
A long time ago.
And that was when I was 4. So learning how to ride a bicycle taught me 2 things early on: how to control my anger and how to handle my fear.
Right, and let go and be independent and on your own and trust yourself and a number of things.
Well, I didn't start bicycle racing until I was in my 20s, and that's when I acquired this bicycle. And at the time it was state of the art, and I thought, oh man, it's going to make me so fast. I'm going to be right there with the other guys in the club who were really athletes. You know, I was almost 30 years old, and I had been at a desk job at that point in my life for a long time and accumulated some love handles. And I had a little baby girl who was your mother. And, you know, competing with guys who were really bicycle athletes became very, very hard. And as hard as I tried, and I tried everything with this bike to be as good as they were, I couldn't do it. And I had to learn to accept the fact that I wasn't going to ever do it, probably, because certain physical attributes are necessary to be a world-class bicyclist. But I learned how to accept myself. And I realized the important thing is I am who I am.
Did you, you also learned a lot of exercise because you're trying to keep up with them. I can't imagine you with love handles, Papa. I can't.
Well,
you've always been fit since I've known you. Since I've been alive.
And I had to learn I had to learn bicycle cadence. In other words, pedal speed. And in those days I had racing pedals with straps. And I had different gears. I had close ratio gears. And I had very fast tires that were lightweight. They were called sew-ups because they had a tube inside a carcass, and they were literally sewn together. They made you go faster, but no amount of bicycle speed equipment made me go faster than the fastest guys in the club. So I learned how to accept myself, and that became a critical thing in life. And everything I did, the number one rule was I am who I am.
Yep.
You know, and
work with what you have.
Exactly. And if you don't like me, that's your problem. I like myself.
Well, and I can see that you're not afraid of keeping original equipment. Look at the seat there.
Oh, I
Is
know.
that from
Well,
the very beginning?
That saddle is called a Brooks racing saddle. And back in the day, it was pretty high tech, but now it's all beat up from many, many falls. And that's the other thing the bicycle taught me, was how to take the falls. I can't tell you how many times I have fallen on roads, trails, steep mountains, into creeks, and every time I hurt. But I would always get up. And that's another rule of life. You always get up, and you go back, and you go at it. You don't give up on it.
You had your first out-of-body experience, too, from a bike accident,
I did. My brother and I were racing. My brother, who is now 88, I'm 80, he's 88, had a bike just like mine, a PX10. And we were in what they call a peloton, where all the riders get together in a small, tight group, and they're racing for the finish line, and they're only 2 inches apart. Which is very dangerous. And somebody went down. I went down with everybody else. My brother escaped. He was able to go off the side of the road. But I went down and then I knocked myself out. And the next thing I knew, I was looking down at my body. I was staring down at it as my brother was pulling my body off the road and putting me against a dirt embankment. And you know, there was a big question in my mind, why am I here? Why am I
not
there?
down there?
I mean, that's exactly what I thought. And I willed myself. I said, no, I belong there. I don't belong here. And I willed myself back in my body. And fortunately, I did go back.
Oh, well, what kind of injuries did you incur from that?
Oh, all kinds of lacerations and stitches. And the irony of it was, the next day, I had been invited by the state of New Jersey to give a presentation for a bicycle safety manual that they wanted me to write.
Oh my goodness.
So
you had to be very realistic about safety manuals.
Well, I had to be honest. I'm sitting among these state officials, and my pitch was, look, people really need, when they buy a bicycle, to understand the safety aspects of bicycle riding,
right?
No matter what level they are. And the state agreed with me, and one of the executives who was sitting by my side said, Mr. Van Orden, I can't help but notice there's a big stain growing on your jacket.
Growing.
No, I was wearing a blue jacket, a light blue jacket. And he was quite concerned. And I stood up and I said, don't worry, it's all right. I took off my jacket, and my white shirt was now covered in blood.
Oh, gosh.
The stitches had broken across my shoulder.
Yeah.
And he almost fainted. He said, what's wrong with you? Do we need to get you an emergency vehicle?
Oh, boy, yeah.
I said, no, it's all right. I was in a bicycle accident last night, and I survived it.
Yeah.
And they said, well, I think you're best qualified to write this manual.
Well, absolutely. That's what I was about to say. I'm sure that it altered the way that you wrote the manual, and you were able to speak from the heart on what had occurred for you.
Well,
it helped you understand that changing your perspective and a little bit of humility can go a long way in changing other people's lives.
The bicycle racing and riding that I did, and by the way, this bike and I have ridden together for 50 plus years, and we've gone, the way I figured, about 2 circumnavigations of the earth. In other words, about 50,000 miles of riding. And essentially it taught me never to give up. Another rule of life, just never give up. Always go back. And when you fail, always go back. One of the trips I did that's very memorable was to ride the bike to the top of Mount Washington in New Hampshire. Now, it's not the tallest mountain in America, but it's one of the steepest. And Bicycling Magazine, back in the 1980s, wrote an article about the steepest mountain climbs in America. And of course, the Rockies were right there with Pikes Peak and some of the other very tall Rocky Mountains. But they said the hardest one, the most difficult, is Mount Washington. And so I decided I had to do it. And I set the bike up with gears, the right kind of low gears, and started up Mount Washington. It was in August of 1985 on a very warm day, and it's pretty unusual for New Hampshire. It's a cold New England state. But 4 miles into the ride, it turned from paved road into dirt roads.
For the rest of the way?
For the rest of the way to the top.
Boy.
And we left the tree line. All the trees now were below us, so all that was above us was rock.
Were you on a mountain bike?
I was on this bike.
No way.
On this bike with lower gears. Well, it got so steep that I was pulling on the bottom of the handlebars, and I pulled back so hard that I actually fell backwards.
Oh boy.
Flipped all the way back and landed on my head and on my back and knocked the wind out of me, and it was cold.
Oh.
All of a sudden, the temperature dropped from the 70s down below to the 30s up above. It
gets very cold, yes.
And I decided I wasn't going to walk that bike to the top of that mountain. I was going to get back on that bike. But starting up was almost impossible. You can't just get on the bike on a steep incline and start pedaling. I had to ride to one side and do a sharp turn and go to the other and back and forth until I finally could head right up the mountain.
What would you say your motivation was to keep going? Was it that entertaining for you, or did you enjoy the learning process?
it was just something inside me that I think we all have, but we get fearful about that we don't have, and we give up too easily. Sometimes the solutions to problems are very simple, very easy, if we're willing to experiment and try. And keep trying, and going back and forth on that very steep road, I was able to angle each time a little bit more until I was going up.
Yeah, wow, that's intense.
Well, it was all right until I got almost to the top, and cars coming down would meet cars going up. And here I was in the middle sometimes of these standoffs.
Oh gosh.
And, then it became another lesson in life, how to stand your ground. And sometimes you're not very popular with people,
right,
but realizing that you've got to do what you have to do. And so I would just keep going straight, and the cars would have to stop and let me go through.
Yeah, wow.
And
being okay with other people clearing the room for your ability to go forward. And it sounds to me like a lot of communal experiences happened with you, especially with bike riding so close to one another. And what we call a Peloton now is actually a standalone bicycle inside that just doesn't go anywhere, and it's electronic in a way.
Right.
But that grouping that you're calling a Peloton, which is where that term originated from, sounds like you, even if you didn't have a lot of human experience, you could see how one person's failure could riddle into everyone else, or other people's successes allowing someone to move forward even further than they would on their own.
That's exactly right. And one person's failures that really don't have to affect you.
Right.
You have to find your own pace in life, your own speed, your own knowledge, and build off sometimes other people's failures. I've been in many businesses that failed, and not because of my doing, because the partners split up, or one of our account execs would lose a big contract. Constantly adjusting your life, and being positive and saying to yourself, no matter what happens, I'm going to do it. And I've got the tools to do it. And the little wrenches in your life are the tools, not just for fixing mechanical things, but for realizing that you can inspire yourself to do almost anything.
Right, yeah.
And that little wrench will adjust the seat. And adjusting the seat, the saddle on a bicycle, is critical, particularly as you get older, because you don't lean forward anymore. Your back usually prohibits that. You want to sit up straight. And being too high in the saddle caused me to fall over.
Yeah.
In very awkward situations where, I fell over in front of the bike store, for instance, on my way to have the pedals changed, get the racing pedals off and put on regular pedals.
Right.
And, humility is part of life too. At 80 years old, I don't like falling over. You're old when people start screaming, oh, there's a guy who fell over, and they go running toward you. Can we get an ambulance or a wheelchair? You don't want that at any age, right? Particularly when you're old.
Oh, man.
And that's what happened to me,
Yeah.
And fortunately, there was a man who helped me to my feet. I didn't need help, but he helped me.
Recently? Yeah.
A guy half my age who was pretty strong. And his wife looked down at me with pity, like, oh, you poor soul. Is your head all right? Yeah, I was wearing a helmet,
Well, that's good. Yeah.
And protecting yourself is another thing in life.
Being humble, I think, is where that comes into play, meaning that it doesn't matter how long you've been bike riding or how many places in the world or terrains you've been on, wearing a helmet is still important, and anything outside of that is your ego getting in the way of your own security.
Yeah, and it's usually ego that defeats people. And it's good to have a big ego. You got to have an ego. We all have egos. We all have biases and prejudices and egos. And there's nothing we can do about that except to control our emotions. and control our efforts so that we put all of our energy, our mental energy, into accomplishing what we want to do.
Sure.
That's the critical thing in biking. It's the critical thing in business. It's the critical thing in every aspect of life, in relationships in particular. And the relationships I made on the bike were so important to learning how to make relationships work in business. Because when you're in a group of riders all speeding down the road within inches of each other, you've got to have trust in people too.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to trust other people becomes very problematic in biking, in racing, but it's the same way in business. And you have to develop that and realize someone's going to screw up eventually, and you're going to either help that person or you're going to ignore that person. It's better to help.
Yeah.
It's better to help that person.
It helps the rest of the team, including
and it helps
yourself.
You. It helps you,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
And, biking has taught me a lot about the technology.
Mm-hmm.
The technology of biking is very similar to the technology of automobiles, the technologies we use in the house. You use similar tools, and when you think about it, all of our cars today started as bicycles.
Yeah.
They really did.
Way, yeah.
The men who and women who invented the cars back around 1890, like Oldsmobile and so many others, really employed the same bicycle mechanical skills that they used in the bike shop. They had bike tires, they had gears and chains, and it wasn't until the engines, this reciprocating engines, gasoline engines came along that we really started to invent more automobile technology. But
Sure.
you learn that in bike maintenance, the same thing, it's like Zen. Learning bike maintenance becomes critical to learning motorcycle maintenance, to learning car maintenance, to learning how to maintain your house, your pool, your body. If you can't maintain your body, you don't live.
Yeah, well.
And what you're doing with yoga is critical to maintaining your body.
Absolutely.
It has to be that way. You have to always be aware and be in tune with your body. And that means exerting the disciplines of life that will protect your body, will make it grow in a positive way, make it get stronger, diet, exercise, all combined, and learning the tools of maintaining it.
Sure, yeah. And backpedaling a little bit here to the beginning is that, Papa, one of the rules for life that you had mentioned to me a while back is loving yourself first, and being able to first project that onto a material thing such as a bike rather than internally, which can be much harder to do. I see the correlation between taking care of that and learning to take care of yourself in order to have a proper and fluid and nice existence in the way and literally the direction that you want it to be.
There's nothing selfish in loving yourself. If you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody else.
Why is that?
You really can't love anybody else because you can't appreciate the good values and qualities and characteristics in other people if you don't appreciate the things in yourself that make you special. We all have brains. We all have the ability to think and act and behave in ways that are acceptable, that are socially acceptable, and build relationships. Mm-hmm. And understanding ourselves is the first step in understanding how to help others. Understanding ourselves is the first step in understanding how to love others and give to others.
Sure, and I think a lot of forgiveness has to come with that because, I was reading a book recently talking about how when people don't want to do things like yoga or they don't want to do things like exercise, a lot of it is involved is a very deep level of shame where we all know our own flaws and everything, the worst things we've done, the worst things we could do, and then we create this shame around us that is so deep inside the gut and the brain and the heart that we don't go toward the things that are healthier for us, or the movement that's healthier for us. So
Right.
forgiveness and learning that internal forgiveness first is the only way that you can truly learn to be that way with somebody else. So for instance, with the bike, if your chains fail, you don't throw away your bike, you don't shame your bike, you don't say that it's the worst bike in the world. You replace the chain or you fix the chain, and you still appreciate everything about it. And if
Well,
we can learn to do that internally, we
Speaking
can
of
do
that, that's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
I restore old bicycles.
Yeah,
And
I
you'd be
know.
surprised how many people throw away their bikes. I see them in the alleys and I bring them home and I repair them because something simple will break, like a chain, or a tire will go flat, or they'll break a cable and they can't shift. You know, these are things that people get lazy. They don't want to take the bike to the mechanic. They don't want to pay the money. They'd rather throw it away and buy a new bike. And you can't do that with your body.
Right.
You can't do that.
Exactly.
You've got to repair it, and you have to use your brain to fix it.
Yep, you do, yeah, and research. And so, again, it is easier to learn these things with an outside materialistic kind of thing that is something you enjoy and appreciate first. It's much harder to start internally. So bike riding and taking care of a bike and its longevity and everything it can do for you is a really beautiful
Well, it's
start.
wonderful to restore an old bike, just like
Yeah.
it is to restore an old car. They're easy to restore, and they're very inexpensive to maintain after that. I've got 3 bikes that I have restored. They're my rainy day bikes. I commute to work every day, twice a day, and I don't use my racing bike. I'm trying to preserve it, but I do use the rainy day bikes that I've restored, and they get inundated with water and mud, and they're easy to clean.
And in a way that's fun too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
And that's the way you have to look at your body, that it's fun to restore your body if you need to lose weight, if you need to get back in shape. Restoring your body is the number one goal in your life. If
Yeah,
you want to
that's
live
what keeps our soul going.
Exactly.
Our soul can't be here without it,
I mean,
really.
we don't know
Depending
how.
on how you want to look at it, that's really the way it is, though.
And your body and soul are one unit. They're not separate. They're really one. And the way I look at it, your soul is who you are inside, who you believe you are. And that goes back to the principles of life. You know, I am who I am. I like who I am. I don't care if you don't like me. I like myself, you know.
Right. Well, and you
I'm
need
not,
to.
And I'm not in competition with you or anybody else.
Sure.
I like myself.
Sure.
And if you don't like me, well, maybe there are things I need to change, and I'm willing to listen and learn and get better. That's part of life too. And believe me, I've had to listen to a lot of coaches and a lot of people tell me, get off your butt. And I had a gym teacher named Mr. Tice, and he was always screaming at me, Van Orden, get down on the floor and do 50 push-ups. Do 50 sit-ups.
Yeah.
You know? And he would call me, you're just a rough, tough cream puff.
Oh, yeah.
Can't you do more than that? And, you know, yeah, I could. And I had to learn to do it.
Right.
And that's part of life too. You
Challenges.
know, it really is. And
Yeah.
challenging yourself. I could never be an Olympic bicyclist, but I could be pretty damn good at it.
Right.
And I won a trophy once,
Sure.
not just for participating, but winning a race.
Sure.
You know, so
Comparison is healthy to the degree of motivation and learning.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to the degree of self-hatred or demeaning oneself.
exactly. You know, we only live one life, and it's very, very short.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize how short their lives are, but as I look back at my 80 years, they went by in a flash. And I have no idea how much longer I'll live. You know, not many men in my family died well before my age. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. It could be a heart valve that goes. It could be a blood clot that hits your brain. It could be any number of things. You don't know. So you have to live every minute and not worry about death.
Sure.
Stare death in the face. stare it in the face and say, "The hell with you. I don't care.
I'm here now.
I'm here." Right. I'm going to do it.
Right.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it well to the best of my abilities. You know, the young guys go riding past me now, and the competitive urge comes up in me, and I say to myself, "Oh, I once could beat that kid. I could beat that kid." And then I realize I don't care about beating that kid anymore.
Not
anymore. Not
it's
anymore.
a different kind of enjoyment that you get.
Right. Now I smell the flowers. And, you know, enjoy the sunshine and take the old bike out to remember how it once was.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure. Well, that a portion of what you just said leads me into one of the things on the list, which was to always laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, laughter is the best medicine. It heals. It really heals yourself internally. It heals relationships. It helps build relationships. I'm a school crossing guard, and I started telling jokes to people because I realized they were so serious. And I would see parents walking toward me, you know, with this grim look on their face, and their children would have, you know, scowls, and it didn't seem right.
They were up early, and they had to go to school, and they had to get ready, and they had
pushing
to have
on them the schedules,
right.
and they were in a hurry. And
of course.
I would often stop them, and I would ask the parents a silly question. Like this morning, I asked one of the parents, "Do you know why horses never get divorced?" And he said, "No, why?" And I said, "Because they have stable relationships." and he looked at me, and all of a sudden he cracked up. Now that
took him a minute.
Yeah, that may have changed his whole day.
Sure.
And then the little girl who came through this morning, I asked her, "What's green and jumpy?" And she said, "A frog." And I said, "No, a frog with hiccups, hiccups, hiccups." And she started laughing. And that may have made her more receptive in class to her teacher. And when I see the teachers, I tell them jokes. At the end of the day, they're all worn out. I say, "Well, boy, you look cross-eyed. You have a rough day?" And they always say, "Yeah, I had a rough day." And I said, "What, do you lose control of your pupils?" You know, but
That's
humor,
funny.
Not mocking humor, but just humor and fun and smiling. I smile at everybody and get them to smile back at me. Mm-hmm. And when they don't smile back at me, I wave at them and smile. And then when they don't wave and smile back, I go like that, you know, make an exaggerated smile. And they can't help but laugh at stupidity, right?
Well, yeah. And chemically it's been discovered that it sets off things in your brain that actually do produce joy, and they do change perspective.
That's exactly right.
And for little kiddos like that, I mean, if I had heard my crossing guard talking about a frog hiccuping every time it jumped, I think I would look at animals differently, at least for the next 10 years, and it would change my perspective.
Oh, I give them geography lessons. I ask them, "Do you know what the fastest nation in the world is?" "No, what?" "It's Russia." "Do you know what the slipperiest nation in the world is?" "No, Mr. Jimmy, what is it?" "It's Greece." Do you know which nation has the fastest runners?" "No, what?" "Iran." You know, I go on with these silly jokes.
Sure.
And they take them into class. And the teachers sometimes come up and they say, "What are you teaching our kids?" And I tell them I'm teaching them how to laugh and have fun with what they're learning.
Sure.
And, you know, they like it.
They do.
Some of the teachers have taken my jokes and they use them in their classroom.
That's good.
You know?
That is good. It's inspiring.
Laughter really is so important. You've got to laugh at life. All the seriousness in life.
Yeah.
It could kill you.
I was 31 when you showed me the movie I'd Rather Laugh, or is it I'd Rather Be Laughing?
Yes.
I'd Rather Laugh.
Right.
And it did change my entire perspective and helps me in my yoga teachings because it essentially just talks about the fact that you have a choice. However, we do have and experience emotions, and if you bottle them up, it's obviously only going to become hurtful, both to yourself and then to others as well. So there are time frames to let out all of your emotions in a safe environment. Fully feel them and let them go and let them pass, and recognize that once you've let your emotions pass through and maybe you understand them a little bit better, you can choose to find the humor or the joy or the happiness. It's all perspective. All of it's perspective. Chemically, I've learned that it's 3 times easier for a human being to have a negative thought than a positive thought. Knowing that, we all know that we're all on an uphill battle. So when you're equipped with that knowledge, you can realize that you have to make a choice. And you have to choose over and over and over again to find the humor in things. And it's there. It's always there. It's all just perspective.
And your example helps other people. I had a man come up, the political environment today is so poisonous, just poisonous. The parties, the Democrats and the Republicans all yelling at each other. And this man came up to me yesterday, a father walking his dog, and he said, "Did you hear what Trump said the other day?" I said, "No, what?" And he said, "I hate that man. That man is poison to our country. That man," he went on talking like that.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Yeah, but you want to hear my Biden joke?" And he looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" He's a Biden supporter, of course.
Right.
And I said, "Well, I'm Biden's age, and I memorized his State of the Union address. Do you want me here, give it to you?"
Uh-oh.
And he said, "Yeah, did you really?" And I said, "Yeah, you want to hear it?" He said, "Okay." And I went, "Did you like it?"
I don't get it, but I'm sure other people do.
In other words, he didn't say anything.
Oh, as if somebody else were speaking for him.
And the guy realized I was making fun of Biden, who he supports.
Right.
But we were having fun now.
Right.
We were no longer in this rage mode that he was in, and he could talk like a human being now.
Surely.
And tell me his feelings without going into literally a rage.
Right. Yep. The majority of my clients, if they're in that position, I've got to break them free of it with humor and joy. There really isn't a smooth way out of that can fully take someone out of that rage. It just continues some kind of cycle inside of their mind of self-talk, unless you can break them free of it with some kind of humor.
And I've got Trump jokes, and I've got jokes for all the parties, and when people get too serious, you got to have a way to diffuse it. In life, and diffuse yourself. If you don't diffuse yourself first, you can't diffuse anybody else.
It all starts with yourself, and
that's really
not
does.
A selfish act in the derogatory sense.
Yeah.
It's actually beneficial for yourself and then everyone around you, because you radiate energy, whatever it is we're feeling.
And the exercise you do is giving you the physical and mental toughness to do that. It takes mental toughness. Mm-hmm. It really does. So all the yoga exercises provide discipline, mental discipline. Not just physical discipline, but mental discipline that gives you the ability to see humor and focus, and to diffuse nasty situations, to succeed, to go beyond what you think you can do and do better.
Sure, and in yoga, I mean, you find humbleness through falling when you try to kick a leg up. I mean, I've sublexed my hip before and couldn't move for a while. So, and that was me thinking that I was comparing myself to others, and I was trying very hard to succeed in a way that I didn't know how to get into. And a number of things just led to me not being equipped enough to be able to do something that I tried too hard to do. What wasn't there was focus. What wasn't there was internal reflection. What wasn't there was patience. And so because of situations like that, I have learned those things. So your situation or your analogy in your life is your bicycle. My analogy in my life would be yoga. Everybody else in life, whatever you're passionate about, or whatever your greatest hobby is, or maybe it is your career, these things can help reflect in the idea of life. So with Papa, it's his bicycle and the ways he's explained. With myself, I could go through all of these different concepts of life in talking strictly about yoga. And so, Papa, we've touched base on humor. We've touched base on loving yourself first. You started to touch base on I like myself and it's okay if you don't.
Right.
A little bit. Could you enhance on that?
Yeah, every day I meet dog walkers.
Okay. Yeah.
Dozens of dog walkers come through my intersection twice a day, and their focus is their dogs. Mm-hmm. Their entire focus in life, in many cases, is their dogs.
There are a lot of scientific experiments on that and how people are with their pets a little bit more healthy with them than they are without them, because that internal shame that I had discussed before, it washes away because they see all of the shining light of a dog, for instance, that can pretty much do no harm unless it bites somebody.
So I tell them dog jokes.
Yeah.
And one of the men who comes through is a bachelor. He lost his wife, and he has his dog, this beautiful lab, and it's a golden retriever. And he said to me one day, "My dog is dying." I took my dog to the vet, and the dog, only 2.5, 3 years old, has stomach problems, stomach cancer. And I could see where the doctor had shaved the dog's hair, and so the side of the dog was bare, must have had some sort of probes put on,
Right.
And I said, "Well, the dog looks healthy to me." He said, no, the dog is really sick. And I realized at that instant that he was sick. Every time he brought the dog through after that, I would pat his dog and I would say, "Boy, your dog looks healthy. Your dog looks wonderful. What you're doing with your dog, what are you doing? You're feeding it. The dog looks better." Right. And pretty soon the dog was running around the playground and showing energy and spontaneity that it hadn't shown before. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, "You may be right. The dog may be getting better." And I said, "Well, let's see how the progress goes." Well, now the dog is almost completely free of whatever problem it had. But he had to change his attitude about himself first, and his fear for the dog. And that really becomes, the principle of life.
Yeah, changing your mind and changing your perspective. Right. Exactly.
And I see so many other dog owners who have little dogs. They walk them through and the dogs are going after everybody. The owner of the dog doesn't have any control.
Yeah.
The owner is owned by that dog. So you don't want to be owned by anybody. You want to own yourself. You want to own your thinking. And that really is the lesson that Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, teaches all the time. It's the owner of the dog, not the dog, that needs to train the brain to be in control. And that's the way it is with people. If you're in control of yourself, everyone else admires that and responds to you in a way that shows you their respect and their acceptance of you as a human being.
And just like riding a bike, it takes practice, and the balance of that act gets better and easier. It also doesn't matter what age you're at, that can begin. That balance and that self-respect and that self-control, it takes time. And so some people start a little later in life, and that's okay. Not comparing yourself to others is a very big importance in life.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who use the dogs as a crutch for their own personality. They really don't know how to meet people. And so the dog becomes their front guy.
Sure. I mean, as an introvert myself, it's definitely helpful at the dog park. I'm not good at introducing myself to strangers, but it's sure pleasant to have a dog where they start talking to my dog, and then there's communication all of a sudden.
And then there are the people who have 2 or 3 dogs who come through, and I'll say to them, "Do you know how fleas get from that dog to this dog?" And they'll look at me and say, "How?" "Well, they hitchhike." And it breaks the ice, and as soon as you break the ice, they become themselves. They don't need their dogs as a crutch anymore. They can talk to you. So, in life, you don't need a dog. You don't need another person to become your front person in a relationship or in your ability to communicate with your children or with society. You need yourself to be in charge of whatever it is you're doing. Sometimes you have to be humble and back off because there are a lot of people who are threatened by people who are strong that way.
Yep.
Very, very threatened. And you have to be able to read people. And reading people in life, just like when you're in a peloton riding your bike, you've got to be able to read everybody around you.
Yeah.
Who are the people who are afraid? Who are the people who are in control? Who is the most likely person to go down in front of you? Will get out of his way or her way. You got to be able to read the people around you and adjust your personality so that you love yourself first and are able to give your love to other people as a result of that appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do that, you're not going to be able to love anybody.
Right. Well, Papa, what else do you have that could compare to your bike riding? Or maybe there's a number on the list that you had originally given me that we haven't touched base on?
I can't remember. I'm sorry?
That we haven't touched base on yet?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Papa, for interviewing with me. And I'm so grateful to be here with him. If you guys have any questions, please reach out, like, subscribe, follow. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.
Thank you. Enjoyed talking with you. Bye-bye.